Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session, and we'll just give a couple of minutes for people to join in. And I think we have a lot of people here, but thank you all for joining us, and really appreciate you taking your time off. And we are excited about a great panel and a great topic for the discussion. So I think while, maybe people are joining, if others who have joined in, if you can use your chat to just maybe quickly share your name, organization role. So it will be good to hear, if you are already in cybersecurity domain. So happy to hear some introduction. No one can use the chat. No problem. No problem. So as we wait for more people to join in, let me introduce myself. My name is Shruti Mishra. I am with the NASCOM and I am handling all the GCC initiatives and driving the agenda for growth for the GCCs. Yeah. Yeah, we have Kaushik from Roche. Hi, Kaushik. Hi, Sham. So I think we are already in, 3 minutes, and we have obviously continuously people joining, but let's respect the time of the people who are here. And thank you once again, everybody, for joining us. So I'm going to give you a small context about the session on, Secure in India report, jointly published by DSCI, KPMG, and NASCOM. So today, cybersecurity are seen as a value-generating entities and hub for cyber leadership, diverse cybersecurity talent, and excellence. So the Secure in India report focuses on how cyber GCCs are empowering their global organization deal with cybersecurities and digital risk, including new businesses and new technology, models. So this is the first webinar in Secure in India report, and we are going to discuss about the emergence of India as a key destination for cyber GCCs, role of Indian GCCs, challenges faced by the cyber GCCs, innovation in cybersecurity, collaboration, opportunity, and of course, talent development. So we have a wonderful set of panelists, very experienced. They come from the diverse background and diverse industry segment. So we have Vinayak Godse, CEO, Data Security Council of India, Visagan, VP, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure, Target India Private Limited, Sourav Chanda, Senior Director, Cybersecurity, Providence Global Center, and the panel is going to be moderated by Annapurna, Partner Cyber Assurance, KPMG. So I'm going to, first invite Annapurna to introduce herself and kickstart the conversation. And also, before hand it over to Annapurna, I just wanted to tell the audience here, please use the chat, use the Q&A tab to make an interactive session. Thank you again, and over to you, Annapurna.
Thank you. Thanks, Shruti, and thank you so much for organizing this session and setting up this great panel. Like Shruti said, I'm Annapurna. I'm a partner with KPMG. I've been with the firm for 17 years now, and I'm based in Hyderabad, which is one of the cities that has seen great growth thanks to the GCC growth as well. And I've also been actively and very closely involved in authoring the Secure in India report. So this makes it in that way much more personal also for me. So this is the third edition of Secure in India in 2023. We had two more editions before this. And if you get a chance to read all three, what you will see is it's grown in line with how the GCCs have grown. Like the first two editions, you'll see talk more about capability, availability of talent, what sort of skills. We talk about that in this edition also, but also you get to see conversation about R&D, you get to see conversations about innovation, and also how we are moving up more from a leadership and accountability perspective as well. So it tells an interesting story of the emergence or the growth and evolution of GCCs, and specifically cyber GCCs in India. When we say cyber GCC, and that's a term that we use, it means where there's a significant cyber function that is servicing the global parent organization. So that's the term that you'll hear us use quite a bit. The report itself talks about, like I said, we'll talk about from an organization perspective, what sort of evolution, from a capability, from function perspective. And a chapter that's most exciting is on innovation, and we'll talk quite a bit about that also. And also challenges and opportunities that we see. And this is a great panel in the sense that it covers a spectrum of GCCs that have been around for around 20 years to maybe the last 4 or 5 years. So it's a good spectrum of where we can discuss strategies of how different organizations see the evolution as well. And also Mr. Vinayak can actively talk about the overall industry or the broader perspective. So it's a great panel, diverse in terms of experience of the GCC itself. So just jumping right into maybe first a more macro topic, which is how GCCs have grown itself within India. Just to quote some statistics. So this report had almost 55% of the respondents said that their cyber GCC was set up in the last 5 years, which means, the case was built over the last 10-15 years, and in the last 5 years is when we saw that consolidate and a lot of organizations come in. Also, over 28% said that over half of the global cyber organization now sits in India. So is very strategically key and even operationally. And another interesting perspective is from a leadership and accountability perspective. Almost 80+% said that the leaders here are or represent the India team globally in cyber strategy forums for the parent organization. And also over 60% have global teams reporting into them, and which clearly means that there's a lot of accountability and leadership from India. So Visa, if I can start with you, since the organization has been here for a significant amount of time, how do you see the emergence of the cyber function globally, from India to the global organization?
Thank you, Annapurna. I'm Visa, representing Target, and very glad to be part of this conversation. As Annapurna called out, we had the luxury of starting Target back in 2004. So technically, we are 20 years old as a GCC in India. The cyber journey started in the last 13, 14 years. So it's fair to say that we have had our cyber team in Target India for close to 14 years. So I'm going to go back to a report that DSCI and Zinnov published mid last year, where they kind of categorized how GCCs have evolved over a period of time. And if you look at Target journey, it kind of maps to that sections that they have called out. It starts off as a offshoring capability, then gets into a mode of what I call as a satellite office, then a center of excellence, then a value creation partner, right? So when I look back the cyber journey for Target, the cyber GCC part of it, I vividly remember us going through all these phases because we've been around for 15 years as a cyber team. We started off as a follow the sun model. Then there was a little bit of confidence built to say, can we scale this team, give them some specific accountability? And that accountability meant we were playing to our strengths. When I say strengths, for example, if I'm good at hiring developers, maybe identity capabilities were easily offloaded to India. So it initially started off a center of excellence where you think maybe pen testers are really good in India. So let's move pen test to India, or application security to India, which is the second part in the journey that I mentioned, where it's a specialization and then it becomes a center of excellence. And later in the journey, it moves away from what I call as a cost tangent or a skill set to more holistic approach to say, hey, what else can we do end to end to India? And as Annapurna called out, today Target is in a journey where there is global leadership provided in India. We are almost on the third or the fourth phase where we have products and we have end-to-end capabilities, global leadership in India. And it's no more a cost tangent or a location advantage. It's a R&D center, it's an innovation center. So I think if you put a lot of effort in building the right capabilities in India, and GCCs have proven that time and again, not only with Target, but with other organizations, where if you're able to move the needle in terms of maturity, then you're providing a ton of value to the parent organization.
That's interesting. So you've seen the whole journey from the beginning to now, actually value creation. Sort of keen to know your experience, because you're or maybe on the younger side of the GCC experience or setup function here in India.
Thank you, Annapurna. Hello, everyone. This is Sourav from Providence in India. Providence has been in India, since the last 4 years. So probably we are one of the newest, GCCs that were technically born during the COVID time. Now, the primary drivers, for the GCC setup, for Providence, has been, our CIO's vision to basically have an engineering muscle for Providence, benefit from India's engineering prowess, digital capabilities in internet, AI, ML, cloud, cyber, data analytics, and so on and so forth, and sustainable globalization, as in like create a sustainable global operating model. Today, we have been able to kind of, build 20 functional areas in cyber in a span of 4 years. About 130 employees, 127, 28 employees are there. And we have been able to build all security functions, include architecture and engineering, operations, GRC, IAM, so on and so forth. I would call actually, the same GCC maturity model that Visa mentioned like a while ago, from Zinnov. So if I kind of, quote in the same model or use the same maturity model, Providence GCC started in the third phase, more as a portfolio hub, wherein, you basically own the development and the engineering ownership, you would do digital transformation and implement global service operation 24/7, so on and so forth. However, we are swiftly moving on or molding ourselves into a transformation hub, which is basically the fourth one, in which we are basically acquiring, portfolio, business ownership, growth and transformation, budget ownership, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things that I would want to mention, that has been key to our journey, and that is basically innovation. Now, a couple of items about how we actually implemented innovation are as follows. We have built each function like a center of excellence. Now, when you do or build each function like a center of excellence, each function or each capability is capable of incubating newer capabilities and services because it is built such. The second is about building depth. Now, we have been able to build depth to be able to significantly contribute and own security capabilities and services out of India. And third, one of the most important thing is we have been able to develop and execute on something that we call Innovation Index. It's basically a homegrown innovation framework focused on capability certifications, event hackathon participations, ideation, paper publication, patent filing, and so on and so forth. That kind of pushes the boundaries of innovation.
No, and
back to you, Anu.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So you started at the center of excellence phase in the maturity model. I think that's the advantage that you had on the back of a lot of experience of many other GCCs as well. And we will come back and talk through innovation quite a bit. And I just want to, Vinayak, if I could just bring you in specifically on the contributions that the GCCs have been able to make. If you look at the kind of functions that are being delivered from here, the traditional ones still continue in terms of application security, vulnerability management, identity access management, SOC operations, but a significant budget prioritization has increased for things like risk assessments, for engineering, cyber product management, and innovation. So there is a shift in where there is a prioritization. even if you look at, and from the report itself, from the key drivers, like Sourav was talking about, drivers for GCC, it's again the traditional ones still exist in terms of cost arbitrage, availability of talent, but also the availability or to be able to innovate at scale, but with efficiency in cost. That is also an emerging factor. Um, what just keen to hear your views in terms of how or what influenced this shift, both internally within GCCs and even more from an environment perspective.
Yeah, so I think way we hear from both of them, right? So the imperatives of a cyber is increasingly changing from mere managing to engineering, right? So uh, there are a lot of solutions until now we have been putting together processes or management effort, but now the kind of advancement that we see and the kind of volume and velocity at which the innovations are happening, uh, even the user of a technology has to engineer a lot for cybersecurity. And that shift that we have been evidently seeing in GCC and in Indian domestic ecosystem as well, that the security teams of any setup or any vertical, basically, we are seeing that increasingly the engineering innovation is becoming very important part of that. They themselves have been innovating because they are putting the developmental effort internally, or they are willing to work with the external ecosystem like a startup, like a researcher. And that is the major critical shift that we have been seeing in terms of the way things are happening in the cybersecurity space. Another thing is because of the compliance obligations where they are, right, and the kind of nitty-gritties at which the compliance, especially privacy, is going. So a lot of efforts are also going on in terms of helping to manage those controls better, basically, right? And the potency of a cyber breaches that we have seen in recent past and kind of ramification they create, basically. So, and especially in GCC, as most of those organizations work at a global scale, so the nuances are not only uh, voluminous or significant, but they are also complex in nature and cross-border in nature, basically. So that part is also very interesting to see, and that those learnings and experience that people are getting to work to manage this compliance is also very important part, basically. Another thing that we see as well is the GCC is an ecosystem. They work with vendor all across globe, right? So third-party security management is also a good learning that when we talk to GCC leaders, basically, so we learn a lot about how we manage the security when the business relationship is becoming more complex and more unbundled in that sense, basically. So some of these contributions GCCs are making, and in last 1 or 2 years of time, I see a lot of discussion happening on emerging tech. We'll talk about that in the course of time.
Sure. Ram, I was going to bring you in on innovation anyway, so maybe we could ask you a joint question, one on just the journey of your GCC and its growth within India. And second is, even in your article in the report, you talk about how GS is a transformation center for the global organization. So how do you how do you manage innovation programs? I know we talked about this in earlier panels also, and it's a really interesting view. And maybe once you pitch in, I'll just quote some insights and bring the others in also on the innovation conversation.
Sure. In terms of the journey for cyber operations for GS, it's pretty much what all the other panelists said. Started off just doing a couple of functions in a fairly small manner, but over the last few years, and GS started its GCC in 2004, so we are 20 years this year from September. Cyber operations started in 2007. So now from 2007 to now, we are about 37-38% of the global cyber team sits here in across Bangalore and Hyderabad. I'll not go into all of the other points which was made because it will be a duplication. But certainly, all I'll say is we went through pretty much the same journey. A couple of things which is probably worth highlighting is probably in terms of innovation as well, is how we are aligned with the businesses. So yes, we do have a strong engineering front here. In fact, a significant engineering component. But what we also have is every single business of Goldman Sachs is represented in India. It could be investment banking, it could be our traditional treasury management, it could be investment research, or global markets and operations, our fixed income. So you name it, all of them are in Bangalore as well. So what does it do for us? It kind of allows us to build that rapport with the businesses directly. In some, if not all of the organization, there is that small limitation where the business interaction always tend to happen with the hub teams. For us, the business interaction happens with us. So if we have to draw up a security model for payment system, the teams are right here, both the business teams as well as the engineering teams. If it is something around, let's say, RPA, how do we build, how do we secure, those are here in terms of why do we use it, if we have to detect something, etc. So in terms of the low walls, that's what our CIO keeps saying. The walls in Bangalore are much lower than walls everywhere else. So the business and engineering are not segregated. We work front to back. So that helps us quite a bit. So that is what I would say. I don't know whether I should go on with the innovation part or I'll save it for later.
So if I can, yeah, so I'll just introduce the chapter and then maybe we can continue. And this, I'm sure everyone would like to contribute. For anyone who, please look at the report. This is probably the, and I know all of us get asked either internally during our projects or in our own initiatives on how we can do things differently or use emerging technologies in the way we work. Or even if any of you are attending interviews and you want the answers to what can you disrupt using emerging technology, this chapter is a great reference. Like I said, we have, and more, this is live examples of experimentation, of implementation that the respondents generously gave us. So you will, and this is across the spectrum. So in this section specifically, we talk about two things. One is how do organizations run initiatives from a cyber perspective, and the top ones are, one is hackathons or bug bounty programs seem to be very popular because they help collaborate with the developer community, help collaborate with the wider ecosystem in many places, and brings in results that maybe a group working in the same function may not have brought in. So that's a very popular method. There is the more traditional method of running a program with identifying short-term, medium-term, long-term fixes and programs and driving specific innovation programs. The other, which I found really interesting also, is essential, and this is, I'm on the back of the success of the startup world, which is people developing the prototypes and MVPs and finding funding internally and finding sponsors internally to help push their program. And something that works great for all of us is to include it as a goal in your yearly goals, to say you will be evaluated on whether or not there is innovation. So there is a wide spectrum of methods that organizations are using. So if I could ask the panelists, and I'm sure all of you sit on panels where you evaluate ideas, what would get you interested in, if someone said, I have an idea that I think we can develop, what would be some of the parameters that you would look at in saying, is an idea interesting from a cyber perspective?
I'll go first, Annapurna.
Yeah.
I think any idea that comes to the table, right? So I'm going to steal something that Ram said just a while back, right? And Ram said two things that stood out, which is how there are co-located capabilities within GCCs today, which means that there is finance, there is HR, there is business, there is tech, there is data science, which means you have a whole ecosystem. When you have that ecosystem, it's easier for you to innovate, scale. The second thing that I can think of is when an idea comes to the table, I would probably apply these 4 lenses, which I call as scale, complexity, impact, and outcome, right? There are pet ideas, pet projects, fancy ideas, right? But how do you draw the line saying that what's the value, return on investment on something like that? At Target, a few years back, it was a hackathon idea for us to build our own FIDO server, which is our biometric solution for logging into without passwords. Initially, it was just a hackathon idea, but that made sense for us to scale that across the enterprise, which meant that 400,000 employees within Target were able to use a biometric login, which is a far more safer, secure solution than a password. And then when I use the word scale, we've immediately found that as an opportunity that we can extend to a guest, which is the people who shop with Target, right? The Target online accounts. So when you build an idea, when you sponsor an idea, it's important to be able to understand the return on investment, the value creation, and the scalability or extensibility of a solution like that. So the other thing that Ram said that really stuck with me, or I've heard our leaders talk a lot, is how speed to market is such a real good thing in India, right? So Ram said the walls are smaller. That's exactly what I'm trying to infer as well, right? So when you look at the innovation ecosystem, look at our country itself, the scale at which digitalization happens, or adoption. So that mindset of standing up, walking up to somebody, getting somebody into a room and getting things done is a very big advantage India has that I doubt our home teams back in US or wherever you're from has the same advantage.
That's interesting. So it's an evaluation framework that involves your ability to hustle and get things done as well. Absolutely. Anyone else wants to talk about the parameters that you would look at while evaluating, or even when you're pitching an idea, like what would you say would work?
I can
Probably,
yeah, please
yeah,
go ahead.
Vinayak, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that I think Visa probably made all the points that are needed. I'll probably add maybe a few, 1 or 2 here. I definitely echo when he said, act on things that are available locally. So, the proximity to the other teams is actually a big thing that we have in the GCC in India. And if you can use it, to your benefit to develop anything, that should be the first thing that should be a parameter. The second thing, as I was talking about, is the engineering prowess that India has, and the digital capabilities. So anything that is available locally in India, anything that is within our reach, definitely should add to, the second parameter. The third one that we have done, in Providence, was to basically go by voice of customer, right? And if we basically talk about the other innovations thing, I'll bring out something that we developed. We call them security accelerators. But then we started with the voice of customers and the people who engage with the cybersecurity team, understanding where exactly the friction is, and based on where the friction is, what challenges they are facing. We gathered it from an outside-in perspective to be able to kind of roll out some of these things to other functions. So those would be like a couple of things that I would wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, probably a couple of things, not so much as parameters, but what the ecosystem has in terms of various touch points within GS is we have a program called as GS Accelerate. This is a global program which also India benefits from, where where number of ideas are pitched in. Everybody is allowed to pitch in their ideas. And then obviously they are evaluated through a panel of MDs. I sit in one of those panels where we look at all the ideas that have come. And for the selected 5 to 7 ideas, we actually do the initial stage funding, assign a mentor, and assign a buddy to them. So in terms of them going through the journey of building a new company, that would help them as well as aid innovation within the firm. we also have a program called as 10,000 Women, where we look at women entrepreneurship. There's a lot of that footprint in India as well. So there are tech components of that 10,000 Women program, which allows us to do. And as you rightly said, Annapurna, we sit, at least I sit on 2 or 3 investment panels where our businesses actually call us saying that, hey, these guys are saying that there is they are doing some interesting work in terms of cybersecurity. Can you sit through this meeting and see how does this look like? Do we really feel excited about this, etc.? So there is that high of quote unquote making decisions in terms of investment for the firm. So all these are some are more, some are less, but individual components of how it aids innovation.
Vinayak, sir, you were saying something.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, like, there's a cyber innovation program that we run as a DSCI with help of NASCOM and largely focusing on GCC, right? So what we see is the very use case driven approach on one hand, like we get a use case and there are 50 plus startups on security. So we try to scout the startup and see how that happens basically. And as Ram talked about, like most of this is a very organized process to engage with the startup and this ecosystem. Sometimes we struggle to find that in the Indian ecosystem, but we found that as a good level of maturity. Most of them have this accelerator program, incubation program, and in most of the cases, we also see there's a funding possibilities as well, actually. So, that maturity in terms of how to manage the engineering and innovation function does exist in GCC, and that's the learning that we take it to the domestic market here in India, basically. And sometimes it's proactive, but most of times it's a use case that comes, and then you try to scout capabilities against those use cases. This is one part. Second, interesting thing, it's not always like a external startup engaging with GCC. It's also internal engineering team that we see in almost everywhere, basically, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at globally, it's a big global organization, and GCC definitely has a scale. So whatever they are doing for security, they sometimes bring it to the global market as well. In some cases, we have seen even some of the capability built in some organizations has been put for open source to be used by other organizations. So we also see that as an important trend in this.
Yeah. And there is an example of that again in the report, and we talk quite a bit about the use of open source. I think almost 60% of them, 60% respondents said that they're open to and actively look at open source based technologies. There's even an example of one GCC replacing their commercial eGRC system with a open source based architecture, which again, the disruption, you would think that in highly regulated organizations, the innovation would be curtailed, but clearly not. Moving on, and a big part of all of this is obviously the talent. It's even in our survey, we see that the availability of talent is seen as the biggest driver for GCCs to consider India first and then move on to other parameters. And while that is the case, the other side that we also see is that there is still a shortage in terms, and I think that is also referred to in the report in a particular article where it says that I think close to around 30% cybersecurity jobs did remain open at the end of last year. So, and since talent is such a key part of the GCC focus, I just wanted to understand, and just to bring in one of the challenges that is also seen post-COVID has been retention. There has been an increase in the band of attrition, also because of the large demand, I think. And the other factor is, in addition to rewards and compensation, people are also looking at access to remote working, access to working from specific locations. And since people and talent management is a big part of your jobs, and I just wanted to pick your brain about how you see the talent space. One is from an availability, especially with emerging technology, and what sort of strategies do you have in place to foster and to retain key talent? Visa, if you would like to start.
Sure. I think it's a great point that we're deliberating here. When I think about talent, I'll probably bucket them into 2, 3 categories, Annapurna. One is availability and uh, availability of talent from a academia standpoint. I think a lot of GCCs, including us, try and look at what kind of talent pool is available within the engineering institutes, whether it's Bangalore, if I'm based out of Bangalore, or across India. And you start noticing that there is engineering talent, but there is a gap about cyber domain expertise, what they get taught in schools and colleges, which is changing a lot. Organizations like DSCI have been partnering to see how we can help improve the learning acumen, real world scenarios for the college graduates, right? So one is that bucket where you got to be intentional about investing early in the process so that you build a strong pipeline. If not, the joke that I always say that is we kind of steal from each other in a cyclic way, right? There is only a certain amount of talent available in the market, and we kind of compete with each other. But if you can start addressing the source of the problem, which will take some time, but the sooner you invest, the better, which is investing early in the academia. And once you bring the talent within the organization, I think at least at Target, we believe you can teach people security. You cannot teach somebody engineering. What I mean by that is, right, today you could have a developer who is building your supply chain system. And if I have to move that Java developer into an identity system to build a backend system for me, he or she has a engineering expertise. What I have to teach them is domain and security context. So which is the second bucket of work. Once you have talent within the organization, what kind of ecosystem do you provide for them to innovate, learn, gain differential experience? And to your point, how do we make sure that they're retained within the organization? The third bucket of talent challenge that we have actively, like us, every organization is doing it. We were fortunate to partner with DSCI in the last 6, 7 years about investing in diversity. Like you look at women, you spoke about pandemic, how things change, but how do you make it easy for women so that it's a level playing field? 3 years back, if somebody would have said that my SOC would run for 2.5 years from their people's homes, nobody would have believed it. It was done. So now we have that's a catalyst for us to believe that we can relook at our jobs slightly differently to be helpful and friendly to our women engineers as well, so that you don't curtail them to a development work, but you can imagine them as a SOC analyst, an insider threat analyst, a pen tester, right? So that mind shift is important, and the ecosystem for women within the organization is important. And the last leg I'll add is, while we are doing a good job when it comes to representation of women as a head count in the talent pool, there is a huge opportunity when it comes to leadership development women, right? So if you can look at these 3, 4 buckets more holistically and be intentional in every step, I think we are at least making a conscious effort to address this challenge.
No, that's, and I really appreciate the focus on diversity as well, on the fact that to be sensitive for requirements that may be different without making assumptions. I think that is important. Ram, would you like to come in, because there's such a huge cyber setup here in all your organization, and
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in terms of availability, by and large, I mean, for most areas in cyber, we do have availability. However, there are some specific areas where we still see a bit of challenge in terms of the right skill being available, especially if you look at the core cyber engineering, your sensor grid apparatus engineering. I'm not talking of development. I'm talking of how do we build our sensor grid apparatus to capture? How do we make sure our threat management engine or factory is rightly, quote unquote, right plumbing is done? So those are the kind of things where we still see there is a gap, there is a challenge. The cycle time for getting somebody up to the speed is quite significant because there is no readily available talent. The second area where we still see, and it's a natural evolution, I guess. This one is around the new advanced technologies in terms of AI and ML. Yes, it's great. It's very exciting, but it is also when we have to scale up and say, okay, these are the three things that we want to do, and this is the talent that we need. That is where we sometimes hit the roadblock. I mean, we pitch in at the global forums, get the project into India, and that is where the challenges start. If it is a typical application security, typical third-party risk, no issue in terms of scaling up. But there are specific areas where we still have challenges. So that's one thing. And I think each organization, in terms of retention, each organization has its own mechanism in terms of how do we do it. We do also do what Visa said, quite a bit of what was said. What we also do is look at some short-term assignments for people here to go back to our hub location and work directly with the businesses. So if we are implementing a fully new business, let's say we started our transaction banking business a couple of years back, we actually had a couple of people from our cyber team here who went to New York and worked with the TXB, our transaction banking team. So in terms of building security, in terms of building surveillance, in terms of building the basic engine for fraud management, so that gives a great kick for the people. So irrespective of how much money you give, how much response, because the moment they see their names in an email by our CIO stating that we have commenced a new business, this has been enabled by these 5 people, and one of them is reading that, there is the level of kick is different, and that is what has helped us quite a bit. But as you rightly said, post-COVID retention is certainly a bigger challenge that we face, and I guess most organizations face.
Sourav, any other views, on the talent strategy for a growing GCC?
Sure. I think most of it has already been spoken. If I speak my mind, the limited availability is definitely one part, that we see, specifically when it comes to the architecture engineering, threat specialist, core identity access management engineering. These are specifically some of the areas that we do see that there is definitely a shortage of skills. The second challenge, what we also see, which kind of aggravates the first, is the incorrect capability representation by the talent themselves. I mean, we don't talk much about it, but we do see it. I have seen it, and that kind of aggravates the challenges that we have. I would like to speak a little bit about something that Visa already started about. First of all, the women programs, which are based on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the second one specifically on readiness of talent that we basically hire from multiple sources, which includes the engineering graduates that we hire from colleges. Now, not only the engineering graduates, but in any case, because of the changing threat landscape that we have, new technologies, digitalization, rapid modernization, even the existing talent kind of need continuous skill upgradation. So it's not only the new people, even the existing people need that. Now, at this juncture, what is definitely needed is something which kind of give them more like a launchpad, to be able to join the workforce in the best possible way. And I would want to kind of cite something that we have developed internally. We call it Cyber Launchpad. I have spoken about it in quite a few other forums, which is basically a cyber-focused learning path for inexperienced professionals, including campus hires and also including people who are also not from the cyber background as well, so that they can also come and join, the cyber. Now, this kind of provides fundamental and advanced knowledge, also with recognitions through various kind of courses, so as to kind of upskill, the people that we have. The second thing which is also needed is to also kind of put together a very curated readiness framework or development framework for every individual. Not every individual has the same kind of talents. The needs of every individual are different. So there is definitely a need to kind of put something together which is more like a competency framework, followed by gap assessments, career progression approach, curated for every individual. And finally, you basically create roadmaps so that the individual kind of, goes to a level that the organization expects. So those are a couple of things that I would add on, to the existing talent challenges.
Vinayak, sir, I'm sure you now have some inputs already on white spaces in terms of skills, both from a operational entry level and even from a managerial level. Do you have anything that you would like to add specifically?
Yeah, so we certainly, I think after US, India is the country where talent supply for cybersecurity is certainly quite significant. And as Ram and others talked about, mm, uh, getting those talents is easy in most of the area, but some of the niche areas, for example, I was talking to one of the GCC who does product security work in India, right? So product security is very deep, technical work, which requires both offensive understanding as well as how you build solution better. So you need some niche areas of security as well, and more niche area capability that we have, more such kind of work will be coming to India, right? So that's one thing that we see. Second part is certainly because so many domestic organizations use cybersecurity scale, and so many businesses are putting cybersecurity capability centers and cyber GCC as you talk about. So there is definitely some level of competition in terms of getting hold of the best talent in the market. Sometimes because of that, ability becomes sometimes challenge in some areas and some cities basically, right? Third, which is a very great contribution of GCC in our thinking, and that's why now many domestic companies are also uh, probably following that suit, is the diversity, right? I mean, some years back, I did targeted many such GCCs, and I've seen the kind of cautious effort has been put together to build those diverse workforce. And then we picked up that idea and created a national effort on that, and that's GCC the inspiration for us to basically put up those kind of a national level program. And now we see a lot of Indian companies following the suit, basically. Um, on the on the talent side, we certainly want to see from now is how much this AI will impact the cybersecurity talent landscape. Would it really? Because I'm seeing some experimentation that people are making to reduce this level 0, level 1 kind of effort that goes on. But those are the efforts basically that creates quite a significant volume of a demand, basically, right? So that certainly remains to be seen how it will go. But cybersecurity, until now, it has been more lateral skill. Like most of us come to cybersecurity after doing so many other things and came to cybersecurity. That is changing now. We are going to more universities, and there is a good relation that I'm seeing. Most of the global companies have been setting up with the IITs and campuses, and I'm seeing a lot of BTech cyber, MTech cyber program coming. Government of India is also putting a lot of effort in this area. In that sense, I believe the supply would be significantly better, both for the experienced professional as well as the freshers coming in the market. Only we need to look at okay, how do we create those niche capabilities so that some of the value-added work could also be delivered out of India.
So
And probably I'll round off by just a couple of very brief points in terms of our own capability building, what we do. And as Vinayak just said, we have partnerships with a couple of institutions where we run, well, what we internally call as our own data school, where there are about 600 of our engineers in batches of about 60 are going through a specific curriculum which we have designed, our own design, but it is delivered by those two institutions. We also have certain platforms. I mean, probably other organizations would also use. There is a platform called Immersive Labs that we use, which allows our cyber folks to actually go deep into how certain things work, like pen test themselves, how these things work in terms of learning it's a great tool because it allows you to do learning on a practical basis, not just an online learning with only theory kind of thing. It says, okay, if you have to hack this, what do you have to do? So you actually kind of end up doing those things. So that's how we are also creating capabilities through formal means in terms of institutional tie-ups, as well as online platforms that we believe enhance our capabilities for our people.
Interesting. And actually, just to pivot to the next topic, one of the ways in which talent retention or even training of a lot of team members is seen is to give access beyond the GCC. So have them participate in industry forums, have them participate in hackathons, have them, like Ram, you said, travel elsewhere. These are all ways, but a lot of collaboration also has seen benefit, and which is the next topic that I quickly want to talk about is there has been a significant increase, if you see the survey as well, in terms of collaboration beyond the GCC. This includes, like I said, sharing intel, sharing best practices. There are a lot of forums that are in place. And also not just with peer organizations, but with academia, with startups, and even regulatory organizations. So, and the value of this is multifold, right? One is to try and benchmark where you are as an organization, to figure out what best practices are, and also develop a sense of community with and to learn from beyond your organization. So Vinayak, from a collaboration perspective, what do you think has worked and helped increase this, over the last 2 or 3 years? What has
Yeah, so
influenced it?
one one good thing which I'm saying is that there's a good visibility about this global cyber work happening out of India. And thanks to all this leadership, Visa, Sourav, Ram, and they have been visible on those platforms, our platforms, so many other platforms as well. So and because of that, I think the engagement with the ecosystem is quite evolved now, and there is a lot of cross pollination happens with some domestic experience of leadership, which are managing big banks here from security perspective to energy companies. So there are a lot of those exchanges are happening basically on this platform. So there are learnings, there are inspirations, and there are some challenges also that collectively, because many security challenges are like can be solved by learning, and the learning has to be very collective in nature. And sometimes you need coordinated response as well. And we have seen in pandemic time how people work together to really learn from each other, look at how those specific challenge can be solved collectively. So that level of exchanges are definitely happening, and some of the platforms that we create, we get now quite a good and encouraging support. Some of the ideas of the cyber innovation which I was talking about is like a DSA and ASCOM on one hand, but more importantly, startup academia on other hand. There's a one-to-one interactions with academic institutions, but there is also interactions about how do you really build those capability by collaborating with our academic partnerships. I'm seeing even some of the center that some big academic institutions have been setting uh, in academic in one of the Bangalore-based leading academic institution. So how the GCC leadership has been contributing to get that center better in terms of leadership, in terms of people even. So such kind of exchanges and collaborations we are seeing quite intensely. But one of the key contributions that we see happening is definitely diversity is one important part. But for innovation, the kind of mentorship that we see the startups are getting from the GCC leadership is one of the critical contribution, I can say, and the critical outcome which is coming out of it. Third-party risk management, collectively what we are learning and what we are exchanging is also one of the important area that we are learning from each other. So this cohort-based approach that we are looking at, that is also helping us, them as well, to look at what others are doing, what we could do, what we can learn from each other basically. So a lot of those, now this becomes a force, like this cyber GCC is becoming a kind of a force and a kind of a separate as well as the engaged ecosystem-driven approach that we see in terms of the global work happening out of India. We see that response and we see that the maturity year by year, the report that we are putting together.
Sourav, Visaram, anything on collaboration beyond your GCCs? What is your experience with?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we have actually seen a lot of collaboration happening, with academia and the startups. And Vinayak has already spoken over it. I know the DSCI and the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence that exists here in Hyderabad actually do a lot of work on that. I would like to actually, call upon, one area that we usually do not actually speak of, which is collaboration between the cyber GCCs and the central and state government, organizations, departments. Now, GCCs, because of their maturity, because of the journey that they have been, can actually extend support to central state government organizations to not only address their cybersecurity challenges, which are usually point in time, but also take up a larger role to define the cybersecurity strategy and roadmap to improve, their cybersecurity posture and resilience, which is a much bigger thing and actually kind of, has a very long-term positive impact. One of the things that I would like to call upon, specifically an example to this, is the collaboration, that we have here in Telangana, which is the Telangana Law Enforcement CISO Council. It's a collaboration between the Telangana State Cybersecurity Bureau, the Cyberabad and the Hyderabad Police Commissionerates, and a group of CISOs or security leaders to not only provide guidance to tackle cyber crimes, but also to define the cybersecurity roadmap and support execution of the roadmap by these departments. Now, as a first, the CISO Council has taken up ransomware, which all of us we know is probably the biggest threat that we have, and has been working to define the ransomware prevention best practices, incident response procedures, threat intel method, and deploy a SIM, for the Telangana cybersecurity. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would add just a couple of things. One, exactly what Sourav said happens here in Bangalore, in Karnataka as well, where the state government basically on a rolling basis invites a set of CISOs to be part of its guidance council. I think right now we have a couple of gentlemen from Wells Fargo who are part of that, but we have been there. I have been there previously. The second is it's probably slightly specific to financial services, but we have something called as FSISAC, which is basically information sharing and analysis center, headquartered in US, largely driving many specific initiatives in the area of sharing intelligence, sharing cyber threat management intelligence, etc. We have brought them into India, and they are now become more active. So there is a lot of activity which is happening by FSISAC. In fact, 3 days back, we had a fairly well-attended session in Bangalore. About 80 people from various organizations attended that. So that was a pretty good thing. What we also have probably is a very specific thing is in terms of all the financial services, GCCs. So we have a working group here in Bangalore. And maybe a couple of people in Mumbai, but that's essentially, we started, I think, in 2019, 4 or 5 years back. So it's chaired by me and one person from Morgan Stanley. So we have these communities. Some of them are less formal, some of them are more formal. So it's definitely the needle has moved compared to last 4 or 5 years. Is it in the right place? It may not be. It needs to move further. But certainly, compared to 4 or 5 years back, the needle has moved.
I'll just summarize that, Annapurna, to say that I think Ram and Sourav kind of called out how GCCs are able to make a difference, whether it's academia, law enforcement agencies. I think I'm looking at the other side of the coin, like our collaboration with industry bodies like DSCI. How does it help us go back 2 years, think certain, go back a year, think privacy bill, right? For us, if you look at the scale we operate, the target in India has only 5,000 employees, but you know how big the services organizations are. I think for me, the big unlock is when industry bodies like DSCA become intentional, saying that, okay, GCC is a growing capability, we are going to invest in that. Like last year, they did a best practices meet just for GCCs. And when I spoke about certain privacy bill, how industry bodies like DSCI bring us to the table, which gives us an opportunity to have a voice, be represented, and forums like this. I think that's the unlock that I'm really excited about. While we have the satisfaction of being a good corporate citizen, helping with building mobile apps, CSR apps, or sharing best practices with law enforcement agencies, that's the fun side of what we do. But I think the more important part that I really value is the visibility, branding, and engagement that we have at a national level through industry bodies like DSCI. So I think just want to call that aspect as well.
So it's no, there's a lot of selfless element also. I understand the kind of time it takes and effort for someone to and collectively to mobilize within your organization and work beyond is commendable. Just to wrap up, I just want to quickly one maybe take closing comments from everyone, but specifically the kind of, if we can talk a couple of lines about the challenges from a cyber perspective that the global organization is seeing, and the opportunity or the opportunity to contribute that you see the GCC from India specifically, to help even the audience get ideas in terms of how they can contribute to the global parent organization. Sourav, if you'd like to start on that.
Sure. Let me start with a couple of elements that are not only for the cyber department but a GCC in general. I think that would be quite effective. So first of all, is this concept of a global operating model. Okay, this definitely is a challenge. I mean, most GCCs start by having a center in India, as Visa said, a small center, and they would want to kind of grow in a very organic approach. Now, what happens is when you grow organically, you don't set the structure, and that's when the friction start happening after a couple of years. So if you don't basically set the first define and establish the operating model properly, it leads to inefficient results and I would say inadequate delivering of the business value that you would want to get out of the GCC. So when you talk about definition, what I'm pretty much alluding to is basically answer to the question, what should be delivered from where and why? Now, there is the moment you are able to answer it correctly, you would be able to fit the pieces in the right places to be able to actually create the global operating model of which GCC is basically a part. Now, when you talk about establishment, of course, we look at benefiting from the synergies. We talk about the 24/7 models. We talk about 2x engineering, one happening in other side of the world, other happening in India. We talk about 3x operations delivery, operations happening in 3 shifts and so on and so forth. However, another thing that we have to keep in mind is actually acknowledging and accepting, the differences that we also, and that would also make us, tolerant and more acceptable of the fact that we have differences. Differences of time zone, we all talk about it, but there are other differences which includes people differences of culture, priorities, work environment, the infrastructure that we have in different countries, what is possible, what is not possible, the social structure. There are a myriad of other things. The more we get knowledgeable about this, the more we acknowledge it and appreciate it and act in such a way. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the leadership and the empowerment, the local leadership and the empowerment. Now, most of the GCCs, when they start, actually, the need for a local leadership is not fully recognized. It could be that probably the local leadership exists, but then it only exists for operational team management, but not exactly empowered to make functional decisions. When I talk about functions, for cyber, it will be cybersecurity functions, identity access management, SecOps, and so on and so forth. Now, this is also something that needs to be defined and established. Local leadership and empowerment is a must-have for situational knowledge, for a better team management, smooth service delivery, talent engagement, motivation, career path, and so on and so forth. So I basically raised a couple of things that are, I think, common to all departments in a GCC and not only cyber. Thank you.
Visa, would you like to, your closing comments?
Yeah, and I think I'll kind of segregate that into 2 parts, right? challenges and opportunities. Challenges more so like I spoke about things like privacy law, certain, which is very contextual to India. But when you look at a GCC, if you're in two markets, in Target's case, North America and India, in India, we are not a business, but a technology capability, right? So we don't do business. Target doesn't sell anything in India, but you have two markets to comply, whether it's a certain regulation, privacy, log retention kind of regulations. That problem even compounds further if you have multiple markets. If you're a banking that has 15 countries, the challenge is very different, right? So I think it's important for us to be staying aligned with industry bodies to say, hey, how do we make sure that we navigate these unique requirements? It's one to say, hey, you build one, it should cater to everything. Like people code GDPR, but there are still nuances around that, right? So making sure that you are able to partner effectively with the industry, staying up to speed when it comes to privacy, DOT, certain kind of regulations is very important. So that's a work in progress challenge. In terms of opportunities, and if this is more about what GCCs can do, it's a collective responsibility. Some of the front runners should be kind of hand holding some of the newcomers, because collectively we are making a difference to the nation, right? So I think it's very important that we help each other in terms of best practices, open source, even industry bodies like Ram spoke about FSI SAC, there is RHI SAC and things like that. How do you get together? And I think the last comment I'll say that is, right, if you're a GCC leader or part of a GCC team listening in, and I think try and leverage the ecosystem. When you have your leaders coming down, bring them for a site tour, help them take a look at what other organizations are doing, bring in the big four if needed to kind of talk about the ecosystem, right? But I think the point I'm making is, right, it's very hard for somebody sitting in US coming in for a 2-3 days visit and understand what they have to invest in. But if you can tap into the ecosystem and show them how we are modernizing our fintech economy, our digital transformation stories, the talent availability, the ecosystem availability, all this helps you build a stronger case to expand your footprint in India. So lean into the community, be part of the community. That makes you only stronger is probably my recommendation.
That's great advice. Just quickly moving on to Ram, if you had any closing challenges and opportunities.
No, I think it's covered by both Sourav and Visa. So I would basically say only one thing. The more integrated you are in terms of your cybersecurity teams, like for me, it's been easier because the teams here are actually part of the global teams. So I mean, there is a sponsor, there is a need for somebody else to actually invest time in the people here. So it is not just me trying to say that let's position this person, let's position that program, etc. So that is one thing I believe GSP have done reasonably well in terms of having a single global team. So that means there are people who are invested in our people, not just me, but people in London, people in Tokyo, people in New York are as invested as them. And also, if you are in part of the leadership groups, you can influence a lot of those decisions coming in terms of opportunities. So I think those are the two things that you will need to get it. How do we have other people within our own teams in other locations root for our people? Second is, how do we influence the decision-making process so that the opportunities are created for people here?
Vinayak, closing remarks.
Annapurna, if I can add
Sure.
a couple of points here.
Yep.
Okay, so when we talk about the opportunities, I think I would bank upon something that has been already discussed to a certain extent is leveraging the co-location or the proximity of various teams, and I think this is actually really big. So proximity to not only the teams internally but also externally with other GCCs and industry bodies like TSCI and NASSCOM to actually enhance knowledge sharing and collaboration and actually build better products and services out of the GCC. This is one big opportunity that we can actually kind of leverage. The second one, I'm again banking on India's engineering prowess and digital capabilities. to call it more like an engineering hub. We can build products, we can engineer products, develop or enhance anything that we have. We can build it here, for the rest of the world by using these products. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to add at the closing. Back to you. Thank you.
Vinayak, sir, you get to close.
Yeah. So, see, the opportunities remains this decade that people talk about tech decade, right? And emerging technology does create challenge, but it also creates a lot of opportunity for cybersecurity. So, all of us talked about opportunity, but from the challenge perspective, you have to really talk about what Visa talked. So, some of the regulations, and unfortunately or fortunately, most of the technology regulations are looking at uh, uh, solving the problem without factoring into the global way of doing these businesses, and even the architectures and infrastructure itself is global in nature. So we see central government level there are some sense because there is a ease of doing business drives most of the policy discussion at the central government level, and that had to large extent factor into Data Protection Act. But sometimes some sector regulators we see challenges with respect to how they regulate the uh, industry from the perspective of security and privacy, and that definitely creates some challenge with respect to how you really set up the security operations out of India and even the other business operations and technology operations out of India. That's one set of problem. Another set of problem, as the obligations and liabilities, as we see in India, but other parts of the globe is also significantly increasing, and most of the global business are exposed to that. So our worry is, would that not create a challenge with respect to the work moving to India in cyberspace, basically? So we need to really browse these challenges and get to nuances and see how can we proactively engage policymakers here and other parts of the globe as well. Sometimes some policies globally and domestically are meant to look at some big tech company, but those policies hit the companies which are doing quite intense work with respect to their security, other business operations as well. So we need to really create a distinction with respect to what is GCC, what value they bring, and what could be the conducive policy in Indian ecosystem that we should have, so that we get more and more such work and we expand this particular cyber GCC ecosystem in the country.
Thank you. I see a couple of questions. I'll just quickly. One is from Dipankar Ghosh. How do you see GCC's growth in Eastern Europe and Latin America as a location of choice? What should the GCCs located in India do for staying relevant and value driver? So there is, and I'll bring in my perspective. It is seen as a choice, both Latin America and Eastern Europe, especially from a technology capability perspective. It is a viable option that many evaluate, and there are many organizations which co-locate, essentially have multiple hubs across regions. One from a follow the sun perspective and is also seen as a method to leverage capability across locations. So there is capability there as well. And I think in terms of value drivers, what can we do for staying relevant in India? A lot of the questions I think were answered here, but I'm happy to take in more input. I think one is, like Sourav said, be more engineering focused, more problem solving focused, where it's a contribution to the wider GCC. And also, if you're seen as an organization that's able to retain talent and continuity, that also is a factor. So those are a couple, but if any of the panelists have inputs on this question. Okay,
I'll add to you what Annapurna you said. So India's engineering progress, I keep on talking about it because that is something that we all believe here, in Providence. And I've seen that, the more we are able to build the depth of capabilities, the more we are able to act as like a global powerhouse for cybersecurity service delivery. Now, that is something we have to continue growing, build capabilities across the length and breadth for everything that we have in cyber, even going into the modern technologies, the new frontiers that we have. And if we can continue doing this, yes, it's a constant thing. If we can continue doing this, I think it will keep us relevant.
So there's one other question which I think is directly for you. It says, how can cyber professionals based out of Telangana get involved in these community efforts towards a common goal? I'm assuming they're asking about the Security Council. So is there a way for someone to volunteer?
Well, the Security Council was formed as an invitation only, but then we can always take in volunteers. I mean, please look me up. You can send me an invite on LinkedIn, and we can talk about further opportunities. Yes, we all are short of experts that we can actually contribute, and definitely we would love to have more people contribute and take this. Thank you.
I think there's one other question. Can the panel also touch on the evolution of leadership support from headquarters throughout this journey, the maturity model? Most often, GCCs largely are stifled due to internal headquarter issues. I think this is a big one, but I think that was also answered, I think, in terms of being business adjacent, and also making sure that the people who are influential are actively understand the ecosystem, which are points that both of you made. But is there anything else on how to work with the headquarters, if anyone has anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, there is no one golden statement to make on this, but certainly, as I said, I found the more you make them part of your team in terms of sponsoring your people, knowing your people, I think that will kind of solve it. The more they are detached, saying that there is a team that Ram manages and that's it, they should know at least 20 people apart from Ram. So that is how I think of it. And that is where there will be more sponsorship, there will be more investment, and obviously that will result in more fruitful careers for our people in terms of the kind of impact they can have. How do you look at issues like budget and etc.? So I think that's a charm that the leader here should always exercise with the people they are working, and often more often than not, it's a metric reporting that requires you to be influential and be well in sync with at least about half a dozen people. It's not a easy thing, but that's where the challenge, and I guess that's why we are paid what we are paid.
Just adding a few more points to what Ram said, right? In a very lighter note, I would say, give the cake upwards too. We always say give the cake to the team, right? If something happens, give a cake to the team, but give them a reason to think why they should care, right? So there is a lot of things that are playing our favor today. The government policies, the talent availability, the digital transformation. There's a lot of reasons for them to at least be curious to talk to us, saying that, hey, what else can we do in India? Now you have to play to the strengths that you have, whether it's like Sourav called engineering maturity, and people underestimate this. It's a lot about mindset and culture. There is some tendency to believe that, especially from outside, if they're investing in India, that things might not run for a long time, talent will not stick for a long time, or the maturity will be just flat, people will not improve on things. Show them what we can do. Innovate, file patents, build enterprise capabilities, show how much you care about diversity, inclusion, culture. And I think these are things that help solidify that belief of investing in India. But very, very importantly, be a very good storyteller, be a very good in metrics and reporting to be able to show the value, right? It's almost like a salesman job, if I can use the word, for an initial phase, because you're representing the organization in India. You have to build deeper connections. You have to showcase value and keep them interested, is how I would summarize it.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. Shruti, do you know if there are?
No, I think we covered all the question,
Yeah,
Annapurna.
Annapurna, we received one more
Okay.
from Aditya Jayanti.
Okay. In the world of generative AI, how are GCCs working towards talent retention?
To be candid, I think the worry is for the talent to believe that somehow generative AI is to take all of our jobs, right? And I think it's a different dimension, but that's at least what I normally hear, right? I think I would only say whether it is when we saw cloud coming, this is probably the feeling we got that everything is going to go to cloud and we might not have work. And I think for me, for generative AI or any form of ML AI, the difference is the people who learn to embrace it and leverage it. The human angle is always going to be there, especially in cybersecurity. So the trick would be to know how to embrace such opportunities and make it relevant to your organization versus saying somebody, or as they say, somebody who knows generative AI is probably going to take your job, not generative AI itself.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for, it is really interesting. I appreciate, your candor a lot. You just shared a lot of your experience, your opinions, and a lot of advice also for people trying to figure out how to build business case and bring in more into India. A lot of practical input beyond cybersecurity. This has been really interesting. Thank you, and thank you for asking me to moderate the session. Thank you, Shruti, Ankit, Sonu, for organizing. This has been a great experience.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so
everybody.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, panelists. I want to say
Thank
a
you.
big thank you to the leaders and everyone for being here today. And leaders, your insight have made this session really valuable. And we will bringing, more ways to make cybersecurity successful in changing markets. So keep an eye update on our social media. And thanks again for being part of this. Thank you so much, leaders.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
good day.
you.